Okay, today we are going to have a session about the step 0. That is the first step for the BNF developer in the Sandbox environment. I would like to thank everyone that who contributed in the guide that we have for the Sandbox environment, and also Kobe's guys, Anna and Don, for the preparation of the first BNF and the deployment. The agenda for today is what is Sandbox. I would like to explain what does this mean Sandbox in the 5GTANGO context. Some Sandbox operations, the best practice building a BNF, and creating our first BNF. So what is a sandbox? As you can see in the picture, sandbox is a box with sand, basically, but with a lot of toys and things to play. So if we think in the sandbox, we think in BNF, in virtual machines, in networks, in resources that are available there to build a service. Okay, so you have a set of tools in the sandbox that will help you to create your service for your specific application. In 5GTANGO, we will use two open stacks. That basically is the sandbox environment. If you see where is located the sandbox, you can see that we have one in Athens. This is the URL for the sandbox in Athens, and we have another one in Paderborn. If you see here, Paderborn is located here, and the sandbox environment. Okay, so the sandbox operation. How can I log into my sandbox environment? So I have two URLs. One is for the Athens. I go here, then put the username and the password that is in the wiki page, and click on connect, and then I am logged into the sandbox environment. The Paderborn will be available soon. Okay, so this URL will work as soon as the sandbox environment is already configured. So the other operation that we can do in the sandbox environment is to create a BNF. Okay, in the very beginning, it will not be a BNF itself, it will be a VM. And this VM will be converted into a BNF following certain best practice. Okay, and I'm configuring in the way to be deployed by the orchestrators, OSM, Sonata, ONAP, whatever. Okay, whatever we need. So the BNF creation, basically, that's the first step. Is going to the OpenStack environment and clicking the launch instance button. And when you click there, you will see the OpenStack will ask you some question about your instance. Okay, the first question is what is your name instance? I would suggest use in the Sandbox environment a pattern for the BNF that we are creating. I have designed one that is available, is documented in the wiki page. And we should start with the name of your pilot. In this case, it's a telco pilot. So in other case, should be a media pilot, or in other case, industrial pilot. So the second word is related to the function itself, the BNF that we are creating, and the third one is the number. You could have 1, 2, 3, 4, or even you could put here the version. The version, if you have multiple versions, you can set 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1.0, 1.1, etc. Later, the availability zone, we only have one. This is the place if we have multi-nodes or all-in-one installation. So, but in our Sandbox, we have Nova. Okay, this is the place where we are going to deploy our VNF. So the next question in the VM creation is the source. Okay, basically the source is the image, the base image that you are going to use for the VNF creation. You could have Ubuntu image, CentOS image, or even you could start from a snapshot that you have taken before. So later we are going to talk about the snapshots, but in this case, in this point of the VM creation, you will need to use a base image. Okay. After the selection of the base image, you need to select the flavor. The flavor basically is the amount of CPU, RAM, and disk that you need for your VNF, for your VM. These flavors are named with in a standard way. OpenStack have its own standard flavors, but you can create new ones if you have a specific requirement from your VM. So in case of you need to create another flavor, we will talk later how to do it. Basically, if you create a VM and then take a snapshot, you can resize the disk after the snapshot. Okay. So the disk itself is not a limitation. Also, the CPU and RAM could be changed after the VM creation. Networks. Okay, for the networks in the Sandbox environment, we will use a private network, that is the Sandbox network. But in case that you need access from an external from your PC to the VM, later you could add a floating IP. That is basically the way it's an IP address that is in the VPN range that you can use it to connect to your VPN to your VM. So the Sandbox subnet is only private inside the OpenStack. It's not accessible from the VPN network. I say VPN network, that is the network share between the whole environments in 5GTANGO. So also your PC is in the VPN network when you connect to the VPN. But this subnet is not accessible from there. You need to add a floating IP or be in the external net to have access to VM. So the network that you have to use is Sandbox subnet as private network, and later you could add a floating IP to access to your VNF or your VM. The key pair. Okay, the key pair is the shared keys that you need to set in your VM to have SSH access. Okay, in order to configure your VM and log in. So I have created a key pair for the sandbox, and it is available here in the wiki page. Also, you have two options. You have the private key to be used in Linux Windows, or also you have in the wiki page the key pair ready to be used in PuTTY. That is the software that we use to create the SSH connections. So when you be here in this step, the keeper, you could choose Sandbox, and then you could use the key pair. Okay, the key pair available in the Sandbox environment to connect to your VM. So after this, you can click here in launch instance, and your VM will be instantiated. If you need to create a specific flavor, you could go to the admin tab and flavors, create one, and this is a screen that will appear to you for the flavor creation. Basically, here you set the name, the amount of CPU, amount of RAM in megabits, the size of the disk, and also you could set an ephemeral disk. If you need a secondary disk drive and a swap disk. Usually these two values are set as 0 because we put everything in one disk. Okay, but if you have a hard requirement for your VM to have a secondary disk, you could create an ephemeral disk in the flavor. If you need to create a security group in Sandbox environment, the default group, default security group is used to allow all the communications between BNF, input communication, output communication. So if you want to set a specific security group for your BNF, you could do it. But if not, you could use the default, and you have free access to get inside your VM and get outside. The procedure to create a security group is basically click on admin tab, security group, and add a security group. We will see later how to do it. But after you click on add a security group, you will set the name, the policy that you want to, well, the group that you want to create, add your custom group. So the rule could be a specific port, TCP protocol in the direction ingress, and you set the port, or it could be accept all the TCP in the direction ingress, and in that point you don't set the port because you are accepting everything. But this is the way how to set this kind of rules. Any question until this point, till now? Okay, let's continue. So when you have your VM created, okay, and the VM is ready to be used in the next step for deployment of the orchestrator, you will need to create a snapshot. A snapshot basically is a freeze moment of your VNF state. So everything that is located in the disk, it will be freeze and save it as an image. So when you install in your VNF and your VM and the package for the engines or the packets that you need for your service, it will be saved when you click on create a snapshot. After the snapshot creation, you could delete your VM and restore it from the snapshot and create a new one. Also, when you create a snapshot and recover it, you could recover it with a bigger size of the flavor, with other flavor. For instance, if you have a VM with 2 CPUs, 4 GB of RAM, but you think that you need more RAM, you could create a snapshot. The VM will be saved. Delete the VM that is running at this point, and launch a new instance of your VM, change the flavor, but using the snapshot that you created. So by this way, you could resize your VM, adding more cores, adding more CPU, even adding more disk. And the process is very simple. In the main screen of the OpenStack, you click on create a snapshot, set the name, and click the button and create the snapshot. So now we're going to move to the best practice building a BNF. So when you create a BNF, a VM that will be a BNF, one of the best practice is to use cloud image. I have pasted here some location of the cloud image, for instance, Ubuntu, for Debian, for CentOS. The reason is that if you create a BNF using a Ubuntu desktop, that the installation is around 4 GB to the disk, at the end the image will be very big. Okay, so for the orchestrator and for the deployment workflow, I will need that the deployment is faster. You know, we need the deployment fast, and we don't want to wait to copy that snapshot that was created using your Ubuntu desktop VM to instantiate the VM. We want to very lightweight image. So also, the other reason that to use cloud image is because the cloud image have some adaptations or some software installed already in the image that it can be used by the OpenStack. For instance, the Cloud Init is one of the package that is installed in the cloud image in order to communicate directly with OpenStack, to grab some metadata information from the VM, and also to inject SSH keys, and also to be able to run Cloud Init script. So all these cloud images are adapted to run in cloud environments, and as we are going to use cloud environment, we should use this cloud image. The image should be, as I say, the image should be very lightweight. So you need to avoid to install tools in your in your BNF that at the end you're not going to use it. For instance, if you need the debugging tools like Nmap or TCP-dump or Nano, I know that they are a small one, but maybe there are others tools that are bigger, and this kind of tool needs this space. So in order to reduce the disk space, you should remove that that tools that you use for the debugging, for the BNF development, when you will take the final snapshot. Okay, this is one of the best practice when you build the BNF. Another best practice when you build a BNF is try to create the BNF dynamic. So what does this mean? That means that the code that you put inside the BNF should be configured in each instantiation of the VM. You cannot put or you cannot set a hard-coded IP address, hard-coded configuration. This kind of configurations should be passed in the instantiation moment. So when you are creating your BNF and your code of your BNF, you should take into account that the things that you are hard coding should be put outside in a configuration file, or in a way that an external component can go inside the BNF and change it. So if you do this from the beginning, at the end you will not have issues when you are creating BNF, because at the end you don't remember where you set this kind of hard-coded configurations. So you will need to spend a lot of time debugging and see why it's not communicating, for instance, with my database, because I set my IP address for the database hard coded in my code. So this is one of the reasons why you need to configure your BNF with a configuration file to be accessed by an external component that make the change there. So the next point, the best practice building a BNF, is the networking plan. You need to have in mind not only your BNF space, but think a big higher. So you need to take into account the connection with the other BNF in order to set, if for instance you need different networks to not expose one BNF with other BNF for security reasons. The networking plan is very important because we have in Sonata we have networking limitations. So if you have a clear networking plan, you can design from the beginning your net let's say how will be your network service, okay, and then you could use the Sonata networking model to design it. So the Sonata networking model basically allows you 5 kinds of interface. One interface is the input, other interface is the output, other interface is internal, other external, and the management interface. So following the Sonata networking model, the management interface is the interface that will have the communication from the service platform to the BNF in order to make operations like configure the BNF, like grab metrics, or if you have a probe inside your BNF, is the interface where the metrics go out to reach the service platform. Okay, this is the management interface. Other characteristic of the management interface is that it has a public IP to be reachable from the service platform. This is the only interface that should be always in your VM. Usually, we set the management interface as ETH 0. the first interface in your BNF. Could be the management interface, because it's easy. You always know that the first interface is the management interface, and that's it. And then you deal with the other interface. So in your network service that is composed by multiple BNF, you could have input, output, internal and external network. So if you have a BNF, or if you are creating a BNF that acts a layer 2, for instance, and need a input interface, process it, and distribute it with the output interface, you could use the input and output. Okay, as you can see here in the picture, all the networks are routed by one router, and all have internet access. All the networks have internet access. What else in the networking model? Any question about the networking model, Sonata?
I think we are fine, Felipe.
Okay. Yes, just the last comment about Sonata networking model. You can put all the BNF in the same network, but if you have more than one interface in the same network, for instance, if you put input and input, take into account that will be located in the same other space, so you could have issues routing from one interface to other. So you could put input and output in the same BNF to have different networks. Okay, different range of networks. The next part is about the BNF automatic configuration. So you have your VM, you create the snapshot, and then you want to deploy it with Sonata. So in order to configure that BNF in the configuration file that you created specific for your BNF, you will need a mechanism to configure it. So the mechanism is from the FSM. That is a component that you should develop in order to operate your BNF. The documentation of the FSM is available here in the wiki, and also in the GitHub. The FSM responds by some events, the start, stop, and configure. So when the OpenStack deploy your BNF, the BNF start without any configuration. So the FSM will receive the start event, and in the start event you should put all the commands that you need for configure your service and start your service. Because if you have an Nginx or you have an application that need to connect to the database, you don't know the database IP address. But the orchestrator, when it deploys the network service, it will know the IP address, and via the FSM, it will have the information of the IP address of the database, and then when the FSM have it in the start event, it will connect to the BNF and set the database IP address. So after you have your configured your file inside the BNF, then you can start your service. Okay, that's more or less the flow. We will go deep in this kind of configuration in the next sessions of the Sonata workshop, because we will have another workshop about how to build BNFT, how to build network service descriptor, how to build the FSMs. Okay, we will go deep later. Okay, about the monitoring, you need to know that inside your BNF you will have a monitoring proof. This is the approach that currently is available in Sonata. So we have a proof inside your BNF, and the FSM, when the BNF start, the FSM configure the proof to send the metrics straight to Sonata Service Platform. So the installation guidelines are available in the Sandbox environment wiki page. So you can use it for the installation of the proof in the BNF. Okay. Sorry. We are moving to the creation of the BNF. So for our first BNF, or our first set of BNF, what do we need? We need to identify the requirements. In this case, is from the set of BNF that I have in my networking plan. I will need 3 ports for the service that is called WAC. I will need 1 port for the database that is MongoDB, and 1 port for the RabbitMQ. So I have this requirement in mind, that the ports that is going to be used by my BNF. And also I will need to know which base image I'm going to use. So in this case, we are going to use the Ubuntu Cloud Signal image. And the other requirement is about the networking plan. As you can see here in the picture, we will need the internet access through the Nginx that will act as a reverse proxy from my instance. That is the WAC instance number 1, WAC instance number 2, and these 2 instances will communicate with the RabbitMQ and MongoDB. So look in this picture, we don't have a specific requirements for the networking in terms of different networks. We only need 1 BNF with a management interface, an external interface to communicate from the internet. And we could have all of this BNF in an internal network. Within this network could be internal, and this network could be external. Let's go back it. Oh yes, we could set in when we create the descriptor later. We'll set 1 interface as external and 1 interface, and the rest of interface as internal. Okay, let's create the BNFs. So I'm going to start with a BNF, with a VM that is going to be used to configure everything. So in the case of I'm logging into the Sandbox now. In the case of the of this specific demonstration that we are going to do, we will need to create a VM, okay, for deploying for have our Ansible scripts, because Quobis have Ansible script to deploy their infrastructure. So the first step that I'm going to show you is how to create a VM for that purpose, and Anna will show you everything regarding the creation of configuration of their environment. So to create a VNF, you need to click here in Launch Instance. Let me put here the name. It should be telco, following the pattern, telco, telco Ansible, and the availability zone is Nova. Okay, so I would like to create only one VNF VM. So the source is going to be my Xenial base image. If I go down and click on the up arrow, it will be set here on the top. Okay, that's the way how to have set my image. So if I take a snapshot, you can see here that select boot source is image. So the snapshot will not appear here. You need to change here in select boot source as instance snapshot, and then you, as you can see here, we have some snapshots created. Let me change to instance and select again the Xenial. Okay, just set the Xenial. Okay, let's move to the flavors. The flavors, I'm going to use an M1 small. As you can see here, you can sort by CPUs or RAM or disk. It depends on the size of the list that you have here. If you have a very big list, it's helpful to sort by some parameter. I'm going to use the M1 small for this VM. And the network, as I said, we are going to use the Sandbox net, that is the internal subnet network. Net ports, we don't have the net ports, but the net ports is basically the association between an external IP address, floating IP with an internal IP. We don't have ports here, so I'm not going to select ports. The default security group, I'm going to use the default one. This security group, as I said, doesn't have any restrictions, so the default group allows you all the package in and out. If you don't want to use the default, you can click in the arrow and select another one. So if I create this VNF, this VM with the security group allow HTTP, it only allow me egress 0 and egress IPv4. This group, this security group doesn't have it's not created well. You can see here default the default parameters. I'm going to use the default. Also, you could select more than one security group. The key pair, I'm going to use the Sandbox key pair. All this part is optional, so if you have a customization script, you could use it in this part. I'm not going to show this part because it's we will always use as a standard. Okay, so if you click on here, launch instance, the instance is going to instantiate is scheduler spawning. Okay, what else? What more information we can see here? We have the internal IP address that is not accessible via VPN, but if we need to access to the instance, we need to associate a floating IP address. So to associate a floating IP address, just go here to the instance and click on associate floating IP address. To associate the floating IP address, you only need to click on the select IP address. There is no IP address available, you can click on. You can click here in the plus and allocate a new IP address. You saw that we only had one IP address, but currently that I have created a new one, we have two available. So let's use this IP address. When I click on associate, there automatically the floating IP address will be associated to the VM. So now I'm going to pass the screen to Anna. That she's going to.
Yeah, I'm going to explain how to download the Ansible code, how to change it for deploying all these machines. And sorry, just a minute, I need to install an expansion. And how to launch it. And then I'm going to do the demonstration of how everything works, how the walk works. Okay, I can now. Can you see the screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay.
Can I ask a question before we go on?
Yeah.
This goes to Felipe. Felipe,
Yes.
can you say again the use of the floating address you added before? I mean, after that, we don't need to connect to a VPN server, or we still have a inside IP address.
Yes. Well, the sandbox networking is only private inside the OpenStack, so you cannot access to the sandbox network. But in order to access to that sandbox network, you need to add a floating IP. That floating IP will be in the accessible via the VPN, let's say, environment. It will be accessible or routed from
I think I get.
the So
It's
if you
like
are
expose the IP outside of the sandbox environment.
exactly, so if you
Okay.
are logged into the VPN with using the Athens VPN, you can reach to the VNF or to the VM.
By the floating IP. Okay.
Yeah, yeah,
All
exactly.
right. Thank you.
Do you see the screen or not yet?
I don't.
I'm going to rejoin the room just in case.
Okay. Anna, we can see your screen now, but we are not listening. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so I start. First of all, this is the machine that Felipe has just created for deploying everything. So I'm going to SSH the machine. For that, you need to be connected to the VPN of Athens. So we are just in, and we need to change some things inside the machine to have access to the internet. First of all, the DNS in the folder etc resolve.conf. All this is written in the specifications of Sandbox, the explanation where how to deploy an environment. So we set the name server to the Google one, and we save this folder. We also changed the hosts file to set the machine name. In this case, telco Ansible. So we just include in the own IP, in the loopback IP, the name of the machine. If anything isn't clear, just tell me, please. So we save these two, and I'm going to get back to the steps in case I just forget something. And also we install Python. This should be done in the near future with the Ansible, but right now it's like we are building it, so it isn't working fully. We wait until Python is installed, and then we just download the code from Dropbox. I've compiled the code. I've uploaded it to Dropbox, and just for me to be able to access it from this machine.
Anna, just one remark that the procedure that you are doing now is only to configure
The machines, yeah.
DNF, just the machine, in order to run the Ansible scripts. So these are documented in the wiki page. Not all of you have to install, for instance, Python.
Yeah.
Of the Ansible.
Yeah, I just mixed that step. That's only for deploying our machines, the WAC or the RabbitMQ or any machine that you want to launch with Ansible. So actually we can stop this if we are not going to use it. And I'm going to download the code from the Dropbox. Okay, we already have one machine created for this. Actually, it is the machine where we use to launch everything, and it is deployed in this other IP. So we are going to use that one, just not to wait for this complete code to download because it takes a while. So I'm going to stop this one, and I'm going to change to the other machine prepared for this. In here, we have this Ansible code download. You also need to install unzip, and then you would also need to unzip this code. And after that, you have this folder, Ansible zipper WAC. And in here, you have a lot of files, and only some of them are for configuring the deployment. If you see the host file, here you have all the different steps you can do during the deployment. You can compile the code, you can launch an Nginx for load balancing, you can launch WAX, you can launch QSS, or Mongo machines, RabbitMQ, and these are others in future deployments, not right now. So the code was already compiled for me local, so Ansible has all the binaries compiled in a folder named packages with a specific name. So everything is prepared to launch the Ansible when I download the code. The only thing we need to do is to change the IPs to the ones of the machines created. In this case, the two machines created for the WAC were these two, the one finished in 8 and 12. We can use private IPs since we are in the same network as this telco Ansible machine to launch everything. And we have a user, by default, the created user in the machine is Ubuntu, so we use it. And we include the Sandbox key to be able to access those machines with this attribute. So now that we have everything ready, we will only launch the Ansible with this instruction. And only with this, everything could be ready. So you just need to wait maybe for half an hour or a little less, depending on how many machines do you want and how complex is the environment you are deploying. And this could be everything. So you just click enter, and I'm going to stop this execution, just not to wait for everything to be done. And I'm going to show you all the machines deployed and a little demonstration on how it is everything working.
Anna, can you show the configuration file? Yeah.
Yeah, the host or the other. I think it's more complex, but yeah. This could be the configuration file for internally for the machines for setting all the parameters the WAC needs or the QSS needs. This is entering more in the inside of the product. Here you just need to configure some IPs or domains or ports. Like in example in here, you are configuring the ports of that the WAC is going to use, as Philippe explained, the 8000, 8001, 8080. And there's a lot of parameters that talking about them right now, I think it could confuse you more.
Yes, the reason of this configuration file is that you see we have only one place to put everything that we use it to configure our BNFs. So in this case, if and later, well, if the FSM needs to run any script to configure the BNF, it could use this Ansible script not only to deploy the VNF, but also to configure it when it boots. Okay, this is the other part of the configuration file. Everything plays in everything in only one place.
So just I'm going to move to the engines for load balancing deployed. I think it was 41. Seven. This is the first engines, the phase of the deployment, and this is the one that is going to have connection to the outside. So basically, in here we have all the internal machines configured. Here we can see in the configuration file that it knows where the two WAC deploys are placed, and it will redirect all the petitions to the inside. So I'm going to do a request to these engines to give me the providers of our OAuth from our SAPI. And this would redirect the petition to one of our two available WACs and give us an answer. So if I launch it, in here we can see that the petition was attended by WAC 2, the second WAC, and this is the result. In this case, if we are this, I've checked with Felipe that if we are the same client and we continue doing the requests, the same WAC will attend us, so will answer us. So I'm going to do a case. I'm going to simulate a case where the second engines, the second WAC dies for some reason. So I'm going to connect to this VPN, and I'm going to stop this this machine just for the WAC not to listen anymore, and I'm going to reproduce the request. Sorry. In this case, this request should be listened by the first WAC. Sorry, didn't stop well.
Yeah, without cache, Anna.
Yeah, sorry. Searching the command. So in this case, the first WAC answered since the second one is not available. And so the engines is doing the high availability feature. If some machine fails, the other will answer. And also, we can check the WAC is working with some user creation. So if we go to the main folder of the WAC, where everything is deployed, and we do some, okay, and we do this command. This is just a command for user creation, basic user creation with a CLI. So If we enter the credentials, we will see that everything is working fine and the user was correctly created. We can do a list of the users just to check it is in there. And here we have a basic admin user that is placed in there by default. This was a test made a few days ago, and this is the user we just created. And actually, this is all for the demonstration. I don't know if you have any question. Or if Anton wants to say anything else.
No, I think it's fine.
Well, many thanks, Anna, Tom, for having this working today. And I think the next step will be start working on your BNF, deploy your new BNF in the sandbox, start playing with it. And if you have any question, please ask us and start the work. So when we have more advanced, more evolved the BNF, we will be ready for the next session of the training that will be how to create a BNFD, how to create a network service descriptor, and how to use Sonata to deploy that BNF. Okay.
Jose here. Hello.
Hey.
Good work, excellent work from both. I just emphasize that this is a lot of information especially for people who have never tried this. So I really encourage people to try to review what has been recorded, to ask questions. Felipe, by the way, let's create a Gitter room for WP7 as well, so that people can exchange ideas and doubts and ask questions, suggest improvements and things like that. Okay. This very much, the success of this workshop very much depends on those questions and doubts and suggestions of improvement. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Jose. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. See you in the next sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
everybody.
you.